Before we get into this episode, we wanted to make a quick announcement. We usually try to keep this show pretty lighthearted. However, this particular episode does feature topics that might be sensitive for certain members of our audience. We will be discussing drugs, suicide, and death at length throughout the show. If these are topics that might be upsetting to you, please keep this in mind before proceeding with this episode. Welcome to Distorted Opinions. I'm Kayla, and I'm with Matt and Ted as always. And guys, a couple of weeks ago, I know I sent Matt and Ted a video that I believe Stone Temple Pilots posted on Instagram of their MTV Unplugged performance of Interstate Love Song. And we got to talk. Well, that's Blush, but that's a good song too.
Just kidding. Wake up.
That's a good song too. That's all good. Same band, yeah. Same concept. But it led us to talk a bit about musicians that unfortunately passed away, far before their time, and we've lost really a lot of greats. And so we thought that for this episode, we'd talk about some of our favorite musicians who unfortunately were taken from us too soon. And I found that this was actually harder to narrow down when I sat down to actually write the notes for the shows. I don't know about you guys, but I didn't realize how many people we had lost over the years.
Yeah, I think that later on down the road, we may have to circle back because, what we're going to be talking about is probably not even nearly scratching the surface of just what we could talk on. And I could definitely see us circling back. But yeah, it's pretty unfortunate. And, it always makes us wonder too that, if these musicians that were still alive, just the creativity of what they would be able to give us now.
For sure.
And those that, have taken their place, but, there's still that missing element. It's almost like
not the same.
Yeah, it's definitely not the same. The first and foremost, there's definitely no way that someone could be replaced.
Right.
There'll never be another Randy Rhodes. But there certainly can be people and musicians out there that are pretty damn close, but there's not going to be the Randy Rhodes.
Sure.
But yeah, I definitely think we'll have to circle back on this topic because, again, there's just so many amazing musicians that were just unfortunately taken away from us.
Yeah, and even before, last night, thinking about preparing for the show, just rattled off 5 just off the cuff, and we already kind of shared who we're going to be talking about today before this, and none of the ones that you guys are talking about were in the top 5 I just randomly rattled off. It's definitely a big topic, and certainly for music lovers like ourselves, and I'm assuming our listeners too. There's definitely an appreciation for what was pushing the boundary at that time for whoever that artist was. So definitely want to kind of pay homage to a handful of people for this episode, but obviously there's plenty more that certainly need some time in the spotlight again if they haven't been covered already. So I think it's a big topic to start.
Yeah, want to preface that because I know we're going to get the emails and the comments from people that are like, oh, you forgot this person or you forgot that person. Believe me, we didn't forget them. There's just not enough time in one show to go through them.
I agree. On a Sunday afternoon.
Now he's got it.
You have to look it up.
I'm not gonna lie, I did have a brain fart for a minute.
But you had the same band, so it's good. You were close. Yeah. So
could have been a completely different band.
Right, exactly. That would have been weird.
Yeah, it could have been like me singing "Crazy," but that's not how it goes. Oh wait.
Yeah, Ozzy's still here, fortunately.
Let's not jinx it, please. So yeah, with that, I don't think any of the three of us have Scott Weiland on our list for today, but he's definitely somebody that I think we'll cover in a future episode if we circle back to this at some point down the road. But who I do have on my list for today, obviously I'm going to start with, Cliff Burton, who was the bassist for Metallica from 1983 until he was killed in a bus accident on September 27th, 1986 in Sweden. He was just 24 years old when he died, and it was really tragic. Despite having a short career, Cliff certainly left his mark on the heavy metal world, and he still continues to inspire bass players today, everywhere. In fact, I think I read last night that his family was his father just passed away, I think the last year or the year before, but his family has continued to donate to a charity for music education in Cliff's name for years and years now. He's been gone for little over 30 years. And so, that I think says a lot as well, but he's responsible for a lot of the music on the first 3 albums that Metallica put out. And you can definitely hear the change after he passed away in their style. And of course, we've talked about this as well with the people who don't like the Metallica from the 90s, which was a drastic change from everything they did in the 80s. But Cliff is responsible most notably for the track Orion off of Master of Puppets. And I think this is probably one of my favorite Metallica songs. It's instrumental. It's a little over 8 minutes long, but it was much more progressive and melodic than anything else that they had put out on those first 3 albums. And just a fantastic song. There are 3 bass solos in it. 2 of them are often mistaken for guitar solos just because of the way Cliff played. He had a very edgy style that, a lot of his bass playing was very guitar solo-like in a way. It was almost as if you had a guy shredding solos on a bass, and he was a super, super talented musician. And I think a lot of people wonder, like Matt was saying, what the band would have sounded like had Cliff not died at such a young age. If he had still been with the band, would they have maybe taken some of those changes in their musical direction that they took after his passing? So Cliff first on my list, and just as notable is Randy Rhodes. And Randy was the guitarist for Ozzy and Quiet Riot, and he died tragically in a plane crash on March 19th in 1982, and he was just 25. And the really unfortunate thing is I didn't know the details of how exactly he died. I always thought that the plane crash was while the band was traveling to a show or something, but it turns out it was actually their bus driver for their tour bus, who was a licensed private pilot, took an unauthorized flight with some of the band members and was trying to buzz the tour bus to wake up members of the band who were sleeping in the bus. And he ended up crashing the plane and instantly killing himself, Randy, and one other person who was on the plane with them. And apparently Randy was very afraid of flying, and the only reason he got on the plane was because he wanted to go up and take pictures of the countryside to be able to show his family. And it's tragic enough that he died, but then knowing the circumstances, that it was just somebody being really stupid and doing something reckless that not only killed him but killed 2 other people. It's just really unfortunate. And he was hugely inspirational in the early heavy metal scene. He's responsible for a lot of iconic guitar sounds on tracks that I think everybody's heard. Mr. Crowley, and most notably Crazy Train. I mean, everybody knows Crazy Train. Even if you don't listen to metal, they play it at football games, they play it at sporting events. You've heard Crazy Train. That's right. Matt gave a vocal sampling just before we got into this.
And not to mention, his guitar is iconic.
Right, I had that in here as well, yeah.
I'm just saying, like, when you think Stevie Ray Vaughan, you think of the Strat with the black pickguard and the initials SRV right on the pickguard itself. And, what is it? What best described as a sunburst style, or
it's like a tobacco burst.
But that general color scheme is definitely, you see that and it's like, oh, it's Steve's guitar.
Yeah. Eddie Van Halen, same thing. He's got that red guitar with all the white and black stripes on it. I mean,
the Frankenstein guitar.
Right.
Or the Frankenstrat.
Exactly.
I think that's
Yep.
what they called it.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of these guys had very iconic, even Cliff, when I think of Cliff, I think of the Rickenbacker bass. That was, you know, a lot of videos of him playing that bass. But Randy had, I mean, I think he was the one behind the Randy Rhodes V, obviously. I don't know that was a thing that existed before he was playing
Did I
that.
just say Stevie Ray Vaughan and Randy Rhodes?
You did.
Oh no.
No, it's cool though, but I knew where you were going with it. No, but I just assumed you were making a tie-in because Stevie Ray is another. I mean, I didn't have him on my list, but he's somebody that I
need more
certainly
coffee,
thought
apparently.
of, it's
Matt,
just. For reference for everybody out there, we're recording this on the Sunday of the daylight savings time change, and it's really messing with the three of us today. So
we're starting late, and clearly this is rough.
But
it's like on the same. It's on the same lines of the previous episode where Ted was talking about D'Angelo and music, and I'm like, oh, D'Angelo, like the musician? Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Exactly
the
person.
sandwich shop.
That's exactly what
Oh,
yeah.
no.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's cool. I thought you were just tying in because Stevie Ray is another one that he's
exactly what I
iconic
meant
for
to
that
do.
guitar, you know? But he totally is. But Randy had the V, and if you're not a guitar player, you've probably seen a flying V, which is a full-on, you know, V where it comes to a point it looks like a V. Randy's V is similar except for one side of the V is shorter than the other. And you've probably seen it if you've ever seen a video of Randy playing. It's a cream-colored Jackson flying V with a black pinstripes. It's very iconic. He also had the black and white polka dotted full V, which was a Carl Sandoval flying V, and those two guitars I think are like, when you think of Randy Rhodes, at least for me, those are the two guitars that I picture, although he did also play a couple of Les Pauls as well. So, you know, he's responsible for some iconic looking guitars for sure, but he's also responsible for some really iconic guitar sounds from that era, and he had a lot to do with a lot of sounds and techniques that guitar players in heavy metal still use today. He was classically trained, and you can hear that in any of his solos. He was partially responsible for making trem bar dive bombs and two-handed tapping popular, along with Eddie Van Halen. And an interesting fact that I learned when I was looking up stuff for my notes today, apparently he never actually auditioned for Ozzy. Ozzy heard him warming up for the audition, and that was enough for him to be like, he's hired, tell him he's got the job. And Randy had said that it was really bizarre because he'd never been hired to play with a band without actually auditioning for the band. And he didn't even meet Ozzy at that point. Apparently, Ozzy was in the control room at the studio. He heard him, but never came out or anything. He just sent someone else in to be like, hire him. Which was really bizarre.
Like if you can play
it
on
is.
that level, holy cow.
Yeah, for sure.
Sight unseen.
And it's also, so if you haven't seen it, because I hadn't seen this until last night, but there's a video on YouTube of Ozzy, his reaction to hearing some master tapes that were found from Blizzard of Oz for the 30th anniversary. This video was put out back in 2011, and Ozzy hears these solos that Randy recorded that have never before been heard, and he's hearing them for the first time, and you can see the awe in Ozzy, like that he's just blown away. Even to this day, it's been years, and he's still blown away by hearing Randy's playing. And I imagine it probably has to be a little bit surreal just because Randy's not here, hearing these solos that he hadn't heard before from him. So, you know, even to this day, it's clear he still has a lot of respect and admiration for Randy's playing. But, you know, it was more than just, you know, he developed these techniques, but also he was, you know, at the time, I guess he was quoted as telling Ozzy that there were a lot of songs in rock that were largely in A and E, and he wanted to change that. So they pretty much made a rule for Blizzard of Oz that they avoided playing any song on the album in the same key. So every song on that album is in a different key. And I mean, aside from that, that was apparently very unheard of at the time just because of what a lot of other bands were playing. So, I mean, he was hugely influential in changing the metal music scene during that time period. And that's something, I think I mentioned this on a previous show, that for me, you know, it's hard because I wasn't around in that era. So for me, it's like I look back and I can respect and appreciate the music, but I don't really have a full understanding of the fact that these sounds didn't exist at that time period, that they were totally new, they were unheard of. He was really kind of laying the groundwork for a whole nother generation of musicians to come through and create a lot of the music that we've heard today. So, you know, he was definitely one that I had to talk about in this episode because I feel that he had a huge impact on the genre and on guitar playing.
And I didn't realize he was only 24. Like,
yeah, he was pretty young.
I mean, you see pictures and he's got long hair, right? Like,
right.
I just feel like it's, you just assume he's so much older. But
right.
Yeah, 24 is very young.
Right. And Ozzy had also said in an interview that he believed that had Randy not died when he did, that he probably would not have stuck around with him to play with him beyond that tour that they were on, because Randy kind of had a different vision for the kind of music that he wanted to play, and he, I guess, had talked about. Wow, I cannot talk today.
This whole thing's a struggle.
It's a mess. It's a mess. If you're sticking around with us, hey, thanks for putting up with it. So no, I guess he had said that he had actually been thinking about going back to school and getting a degree in music. So, you know, who knows what might have happened, you know, with Randy and with Ozzy's career had Randy not gotten killed in that plane crash. So yeah, certainly very tragic that somebody with so much talent was lost at such a young age. And again, in just a really avoidable situation that you know, could have been prevented. So with that, the third person and the final person I have on my list is not a guitar. Well, he is a guitarist, but more known for his vocals. Lane Staley, who is the lead vocalist for Allison Chains. And, you know, if you know anything about Allison Chains, you probably know that Lane battled heroin addiction for a long time, and he battled depression. And unfortunately, he died of a speedball overdose on April 5th, 2002 at the age of 34. And he had not really been recording any music for some time at that point even. So, you know, but he's responsible for the very distinct vocal stylings in Alice in Chains, on all of their albums up through MTV Unplugged, which they did in 1996. And then
which I highly recommend watching.
It is a fantastic performance. Yeah, I agree. Definitely check it out. I think I have it on DVD somewhere. I haven't watched it in a while, but it is a good concert. And that was actually, I think, one of the last performances that Lane did with Alice in Chains before he kind of disappeared from the spotlight, and he never performed live with the band again. He did record Get Born Again and Died for the Music Bank box set that the band put out in 1999, but that was the last time he recorded with Alice in Chains, and he never performed live with them. But he had actually started out, he joined a band called Sleaze in 1984, and he had started out as a drummer, and he played in several glam bands actually in his early teens before he transitioned to vocals. And if you search around the internet, I think you can actually find bootleg recordings of shows where he was performing glam music with some of these groups, and I believe he did perform glam music on vocals with a couple bands after. It might have even been Sleaze, but I'm not positive. But in '86, Sleaze morphed into Alice in Chains, but not in IN. It was N apostrophe, so not quite the same band.
It's still like GNR type of lingo.
Kinda, yeah, kind of. So, that it was Allison Chains in a different iteration, but the band members apparently were often known for wearing drag and covering, you'll love this, Ted, speed metal covers of songs by bands like Slayer and Armored Saint.
How do you speed metal Slayer if it's already fast?
I don't know.
Speed metal squared.
I'm just throwing it out there. Thrash is quick, and
it is.
And then you're gonna speed up Slayer?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard any of these songs. I would have to probably dig and see if there's anything out there, because that'd be pretty awesome to hear, to be totally honest.
If you just think Raining Blood 2 times, like just in double time, like, arms would fall off. I as a drummer, like just by itself, that song is fast. Like,
for sure.
Speed that up, okay.
For sure, yeah. Well, apparently that band did not last for very long. No. So, I mean, I guess actually Lane met Jerry Cantrell in 1987, and the two of them lived together as roommates for a year before Alice in without the I. I'm trying to figure out how to distinguish. The original Allison Chains disbanded, and then Lane joined a funk band that needed a guitar player, and he tried to recruit Jerry into that, and Jerry agreed on the condition that Lane join another band that Jerry was in, which consisted of bassist Mike Starr, who also passed away, unfortunately, from a drug overdose. He passed away in March of 2011, and Sean Kinney on drums, which, if you are familiar with Allison Chains, you know that is the original lineup of the Allison Chains that we know today. The funk band ended up breaking up in 87, and Lane joined Jerry's band, which was that lineup, which was originally called Diamond Lie. And he joined them full time, and then they eventually, with the permission of his former bandmates, renamed Diamond Lie Allison Chains. So as far as music, Jerry initially wrote all of the music and the lyrics, but eventually Lane started contributing more to the lyrics. And if you listen to the lyrics, they often, deal with a lot of Lane's personal issues with drug use and depression. And most notably, he did play guitar on a few of them as well, not many, but he played guitar on Angry Chair and Hate to Feel. He was also a member of Mad Season, and you may have heard Mad Season's track River of Deceit. I know that used to get some play on the radio stations around where we are. And then he later recorded one of the last songs that he recorded was a cover of Pink Floyd's Another Brick in the Wall with a supergroup called Class of 99, which consisted of Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, Martin Lenoble and Stephen Perkins from Jane's Addiction and Porno for Pyros, and Matt Serletic. And that was the last song that he ever recorded, and he never performed. And I guess they did a music video for that, which they had filmed the other members of the band, but they ended up having to use footage of Lane from an older performance because they just couldn't film him. And he tried to get clean many times, and unfortunately, very sadly, his fiance died of a drug overdose in 96, and some of his close friends believe that after that he just didn't have the will to go on anymore, and he fell into a deep depression. He became kind of a recluse and basically never left his apartment, didn't answer the phone, didn't talk to anybody. And a lot of his bandmates, his former bandmates, tried to get him into rehab again. And Sean Kinney, the drummer of the band, said in an interview after Lane passed that he would still call him on specific days and times every week, and Lane would never answer, but he'd call and leave him a message, and he was always consistent with it. And he'd go over to his house and yell up to his window, and Lane would never come to the window. And he said it was really frustrating to the point that you wanted to kick down the door and barge in and drag him out of there. But he said at the same time, if they don't want to help themselves, what more can you do? And so it was really tragic. He ended up passing away, like I said at the beginning, of a drug overdose. And unfortunately, it wasn't unheard of for people to not hear from him for weeks on end. So, they didn't discover that he had died until a few weeks after he had passed away. And his parents had gotten a call from, I believe, his management saying that he hadn't moved any money from his bank accounts in 2 weeks. And so they had the police go over and do a wellness check and found that he had died, and really, really in a bad state. And so, it's really sad. He was a talented guy, very, very unique vocals. William Duvall has since stepped in as the vocalist for Allison Chains.
I was going to talk about that. Did you see Allison Chains with the original lineup with before? Because I know we saw the bands with the new singer, which is, we were talking that obviously Allison Chains has a very unique vocal style. It stands out. There's no one that sounds like that. And the fact that they found somebody to step in and be the vocalist for the band with the same sound. It is impressive. That they found somebody that can mimic to a T, in my opinion, what the original lineup sounded like. So I think a great job on casting calls, because they were able to find really good talent. But obviously in terms of creativity and, the as we've kind of alluded to, and all these other people we've talked about, what other influence would they have had with the direction of the music for the bands? Because, at this point, I feel like if you're coming in and you're filling the shoes of a notable artist, you don't want to, you're more, I feel like you're obligated to just toe the line and keep the fans happy, because it's the same band that sounds like it used to. And you can't really step out and be too creative, because you're like, who are you? You're not the original lineup. Fans can get weird.
Well, and prime example of that, look at Cliff Burton, and when Jason Newsted took over as the bassist, like, he really took a lot of crap over the years, not only from the fans, but from the band as well, because, they were still hurting with the fact that they had just lost a friend, not just a band member, but a friend. And to have somebody else step into that role, because they were in the middle of a tour when he passed away, and having to have somebody else come in and finish a tour who you don't really know. He's got a very different playing style. Like, I know that's the other thing Jason got a lot of crap for over the years, is the fact that he played with a pick, and that's a whole other episode right there. The pick versus no pick for bass players. But I'm sure it was hard for him, because and like, if you listen to Injustice for All, which was the next album that came out after Cliff's passing that Jason was involved with, there's a whole thing around that, over the fact that you really can't hear the bass on that album, and that, a lot of people are, well, Lars and James made sure you couldn't hear the bass because it wasn't Cliff, and they didn't want, so they basically just, like, drown out the bass parts. It is, I would imagine, very tough to come in and I think William has done a great job of being able to kind of fill in Lane's shoes as far as the sound. But, definitely, for sure, the writing styles, I'm sure, are very different. So, you're not necessarily getting the same Allison Chains that you might have gotten if it were Lane with the band, even though you're getting a very close sound as far as the vocals. And I think he's probably the closest you're going to get to mimicking Lane's vocal styling, because he had a very unique voice that, and we talked about this too. There are a lot of vocalists out there. I think maybe vocals are probably one of the hardest things, because, anybody, well, not anybody, but, there are people who could easily mimic the sound of a guitar. Like a famous guitar player, especially now where there's so many different modeling amps and effects out there and stuff. And you can make anybody sound like anybody, but vocals, I feel like vocals are one of those things that you just can't. You either sound like that person or you don't. And I think a lot of these guys, there's really nobody else out there that really sounds quite like them. So the fact that they did find William is like, I would say maybe
diamond
needle in a
in the
haystack. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, yeah.
But let's even talk about, that's not even going about, when you're taking a placement of a former member, that not only do you have to have your stance as far as, living up to them, but also, talk about the pressure. I mean, you're getting the fan side, then you're getting the band side, not even probably even, A&R side, but we won't talk about
not a position that I would want to be in. Like,
yeah,
I mean, just in a general, like, I mean,
you're not playing like Cliff.
I mean, just a change in lineup, a new drummer comes in, and learning the parts and filling in. Like, I mean, we're going down a tangent again, but
yeah. That's anyway, another topic.
I feel like we've kind of nailed it. That it's certainly a tough spot to be in to fill in, and especially for a notable artist anyway. But
right. For sure. So I mean, and Lane Jerry was, I guess, really good friends with someone that I know, Ted, that you have on your list, Dimebag Daryl and Vinnie Paul. And I'll talk about that more in my Song of the Week pick. But Ted, I don't know if we want to pass it over to you now to talk about who you had.
So the picks that I had this week were ones that for artists that I've seen them all live. So, we're not looking back in history a bit, the Randy Rhodes era of things that, before our time, but definitely current. So to start off with, Dimebag Daryl, hands down, one of the greatest guitar players invented, or could be considered to have invented, groove metal, and just his self-taught guitar skill and what he was able to make a guitar do really sets him out apart from everybody else. But just a couple of things, because I don't want to we could talk about all these artists all day long.
I know.
But Dimebag Daryl was born in 1966 and was in a glam rock band growing up. We talked about glam rock. Kiss was a heavy influence for all these bands. And in the early 80s, he wound up forming a band called Pantera, which everybody should know. And his brother, Vinnie Paul, was the drummer. So the duo in the band, and Pantera obviously exploded on the scene, and talked about the groove metal genre and what that was. Basically, it's Pantera. All the albums they put out, like it's its own type of rock style and power metal, I suppose. But either way, it was fantastic, really, really popular. Then in 2001 for 9/11, they were on tour, but the tour got canceled, and their lead singer Phil Anselmo decided to do other things musically, and the band went on hiatus and then fell apart. However, they were reborn, Vinnie Paul and Dimebag Daryl, to start the band Damage Plan.
Yes.
And Damage Plan started in 2004, if I have that correctly. No,
was it near the end of 2003, beginning of 2004?
Yeah, I was going to say 2003 is when that was formed, and that's where I got to see Dimebag and Vinnie perform together.
Right, me as well.
Yep. So really awesome. They showed up 45 minutes late for their own set. And
perfectly acceptable.
I'm sure. I'm standing. It was at the Fitchburg Airport. It was WAAF's Loca Bazooka. and bands all day, and you're just under the hot sun and just standing there. I'm like, all right, Damage Plan's going to come up next. This is going to be awesome. And just waiting and waiting, looking at my watch, and it's like, are these guys ever coming in here? Like,
maybe I should have used
and then
the
all
bathroom.
of a sudden they just stroll on 45 minutes late, and they're just
geez.
like, hey, what's up? You know, and the hair's all kind of poofed up, and it was really fun to see. And that was summer of 2004 that we wound up seeing them, because in December 8th, 2004, Damage Plan was performing at the Alrosa Villa nightclub in Columbus, Ohio. And I hate the term deranged fan. It doesn't really, I don't like, that just doesn't make sense.
We'll just call him an asshole.
Sure. So this asshole walks in, and
Sound like the beginning of a joke.
Yeah, but it
So
is.
this asshole walks in.
It's dark.
It's a bad joke.
It's dark. No. So a individual entered the performance, the stage area, walked on stage, and shot Dimebag on stage during the performance. And he passed away from the gunshot wound that he received. So with that, it was a big loss for everyone in the metal community at that time. I remember being in college, and everyone was like completely heartbroken because it came out of left field. Like, you don't.
Yeah.
He was fine.
Yeah.
So it was definitely an absolute shock. And if you watched any of our AAF, the Mistress Carey episode, we had T-shirts hanging behind us, and that were tribute shirts that raised money for the family, I believe it was, at the for a fundraiser.
Hang on.
Yeah,
Got you
Kayla's got
covered
the
here.
shirt.
Got you covered.
Yours is so much cleaner than mine. My shirt is, I've worn it quite a bit.
Well, it looks clean, but it's covered in animal fur. Like, it's, yeah, I have a cat and a dog. There's fur all over this thing.
So Kayla's showing the tribute shirt that we wound up buying from WAF at that time as that fundraiser that I mentioned. I wound up going to Ohio for work a couple of years back, and happened to be in the Columbus area, and I basically blasted Pantera. Kind of went to the parking lot of that particular nightclub, saw it, and kind of had a moment, because I think Dimebag was the first rock musician that hearing about his passing affected me on a deeper level than most musicians prior to that. So kind of paying homage and blasting Pantera the rest of my way back to my hotel, just because it was such a significant loss for music and just my general interest in, for what he was doing for the entire genre.
See, for me, that was Neil Peart. That was like, for days I blasted Rush, because Neil was such a, and I'm not a drummer, but I can certainly appreciate the amount of talent that he had and the impact that he had. And so for me, it was like, and I talked about this in the Carrie episode as well, but Mike Shoe's tribute, and, listening the whole way home and blasting all the music he was playing in his tribute. But Dimebag Daryl, so just like a quick side story, the one thing that still sticks to me that to this day with the news of his passing, and I'm not going to say the name of who it was, just because I know we do have people who listen to and watch this show who might still know this person, but there was a teacher that we had in high school that some of us were talking about the news of Dimebag's passing in class, and it really pissed me off to no end that his response was like, well, gee, no wonder. What kind of a name is Dimebag Daryl? And I'm like, who gives a rat's ass what his name was? Like, dude, do you not get that this guy was just like blatantly shot at a show? Like, somebody walked on stage. It still to this day, as you can tell, ticks me off that that's what his response like. Like, I can understand. I can understand not liking that genre of music and, not being into it or whatever. But come on, like, that really, I remember at the time being really, really pissed off. And I'm pretty sure my friends who were in the class with me would probably remember me being pissed off because I was pretty vocal about how inappropriate I thought it was that he made that comment. But yeah, I think I think for me, he was definitely one of the first people that I've been around for that has unfortunately passed away, unexpectedly in an early age that has had an impact. So I can certainly relate to you on that point. But yeah,
Sure.
that's unfortunately that is like the one thing that to this day I still remember about the news of his passing was that freaking comment.
And he was 38. When that happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think not only from a fan's perspective, but Ted, as you mentioned too, it really shook up the rock genre or the whole community.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely remember that day when we heard the news, and it wasn't that long until I'm not really a fan of Nickelback, but I will give them the ultimate respect that, if there was any band that made it very vocal and made it even very public, that Nickelback really made it vocal to the point where, they wrote a single called Side of a Bullet. And what's unique about the song is that it's Nickelback, but they used a Dimebag solo in the actual song itself.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, but the lyrics are just they're like, you could easily tell they're just pissed off, as much as the fans are. Hey, listen, when you have a song that's dedicated to the murderer, and the lyrics are, "I scratched your name on the side of a bullet." Ooh, I mean that's pretty deep.
Yeah. So I mean, just to keep it moving though, but I do think that that it was just so jarring, and obviously, as you can tell from our reaction, that this is still quite vivid. Hits a nerve with all of us anyway. But again, imagine the guitar playing, what that could have done, what Damageplan could have done, if given more time.
Right.
But
I think it's because he was a genuine type of person. A lot of metalheads or metal guys or whatnot, they kind of they sometimes get viewed differently. But more importantly, I mean, it's just the personality, the genuine of musicians out there. It doesn't matter what type of music you play. You play country, okay, you'd be an asshole still if you need to be. But this guy, Dimebag was a genuine type of guy that loved his fans, loved playing in front of people, and overall just an good guy. For this to happen is just really what it makes you wonder, like, why? What was the point?
I'm not going to speculate. I don't want to give
that's just an overall general question.
Credit if or I don't credit, I suppose, is the greatest term for that. But either way, Vinnie Paul, his brother, was one that I was able to meet because after Damageplan and in Dime's passing, they took a little hiatus, and then some of the members from Mudvayne and some of the members from Damageplan got together and created Hell Yeah. And Hell Yeah was a, quote, supergroup that I know I've seen Hell Yeah twice over the years. I got to meet them, the whole band, got the CD signed, got to shake hands with Vinnie Paul, got a picture with him. And you're talking about genuine, nice musician, considering how big and how influential the bands that Vinnie Paul has been in, and he just wants you to have a good time. I'm like, hey, can I get a picture with you? He's like, heck yeah, man, hell yeah, man, come on back, and like arm around him, and we're just like doing the rock on thing, and it was very welcoming, very kind, really, really cool, and he wound up passing away in 2018. He had been getting a little heavier as older age happens, but he wound up passing away from what was the
He had a
exact
heart
term
attack,
of it?
didn't he?
What's that?
He had a heart attack, didn't he?
It's
There's more to it than that.
It was basically a blockage in his artery.
Oh, okay.
But could have, classified under the heart disease category for sure. But he was 54, and one of my top 5 favorite drummers. He has his own play style. One thing I read in prep for this, I didn't realize. I mean, granted, he had signature drumsticks because he's a very well-known drummer, but apparently he would play his drumsticks backwards. So he'd play like the handle end because they were fatter and would hit a lot harder. So when we were talking about our drumstick episode, the tips of the drumstick will change the sound, but he would play them backwards because they would just be louder and a bigger surface to hit. So little fun fact on his drumming. But yeah, so that was another one. When I heard the news, I was very taken aback by it because I had met him a couple years before, and it was such a good experience, and he was so kind. It was just like, oh gosh, another one. That one's pretty tough. And my third pick for today is Wayne Static, and another person that I've seen numerous times live. Another person I've got an autograph photo with, and super, super chill. But Wayne passed away in 2014. Best known for Static X and all of the years of the industrial techno metal that group invented. But that one was another one that was like, oh man, it's just like the line of just like, oh man, another one, like, come on. Like, Wayne was super cool. Best known for his hair that stood up like a foot, like straight up.
Like the Slim Jim guy.
Literally the Slim Jim guy, but
didn't play.
Yeah. But yeah, really, really nice guy. And I do miss that group. They started in 1999 and toured throughout the 2000s. And the band broke up in 2013 for a bit of time, and then he passed away in 2014. But they did, the band is trying to regroup and go back on tour as Static X. And they did release a new album using recorded or unreleased tracks that Wayne was on. So there's actual new music that Wayne recorded back then on their latest album, which I believe came out in 2019. So there is an effort to get Static X back on the road, but kind of like your Allison Chains reference, like, I don't know how you're going to fill the shoes of the vocals, because again, it's very specific. Right. Wayne had his own shout style. I don't know. He the best way to describe his vocals. Yeah. But yeah, that was another one that was like, oh, dang it, we lost another good one. Yeah. So those are my 3 for today. Oh, and for the record here, Wayne was 49, and the reason for death was that he had a strong history with drugs, but according to the autopsy, he died of multiple prescription drugs and alcohol combination.
Oh boy.
So that's unfortunate.
That's tough.
This is a complete downer of an episode.
Sorry guys.
This is like
happy April.
Yeah. But I mean, hard to pay tribute and not be sad about it.
Yeah.
But I think
with that,
if we
Matt,
try to look,
what's your next 3? Try to bring this up a little bit.
Let's talk more death. No, and I think if anything, obviously, this episode, unlike, our other episodes where, they're a little more upbeat and all this stuff, hey, I think it's more importantly to know that, we're a music podcast. We talk about everything about music related. So that even has to go into effects of, talking about, the greats that are not here. So, it's going to happen, but hey, I'm sure next week, we'll be jumping back onto a different topic and being up more.
Well, and more so, it's about how these people impacted their genre and their bands and the music. So as depressing as it is, it wasn't necessarily supposed to be about how they died and how tragic that is, but more about what their impact has been over the years. So yeah, sorry if it seems downer. That wasn't the intent.
I know we're gotten through 6 and we're like, oh, we got 3 more here. Oh, this is good.
No worries, the one up. And I'm sure, listeners out there and, viewers out there, I'm sure you're also relating too. And I'm sure that after this episode, again, we'll be inviting to hear, what you guys think and your guys' feelings, especially, with the topics that with the personnel that we're talking on. But with that being said, the first and foremost person I definitely want to talk about is Prince. There's nothing, if there's any other name out there that's, just as big, Prince. He was 57 when he died in April 2016. Unfortunately, he was found unresponsive in his elevator at his prime residence. It actually, that shook up the music world as well. And there's a video out there of some sort of a body cam that, shows Prince unresponsive, but definitely recommend viewers that if for some reason you have that curiosity, I definitely want to prep you for that because it is a little unsettling and whatnot. But they found out that, it was an accidental fentanyl overdose at his residence. They were also saying too that some of the findings were saying that they were actually counterfeit pills that were made to look like generic versions of Vicodin. So, really, really unsettling on that aspect. Again, another artist that, he started in 1978 with his album, For You. And his last album was Hit and Run Phase 2. In 2015. Needless to say, if anyone knows or has been following Prince his whole career is that, Prince is everywhere. A phenomenal guitarist.
Has an iconic guitar that doesn't have SRV on the pickguard.
That's right.
Very much so. If he even had a pickguard to begin with.
No, it didn't look
I don't think it did.
No.
And it's I don't even know how to really explain it. It's just it's a Prince guitar. Okay, if you Google it right now and you just type in Prince guitar, you'll get the image.
Well, it looks like the symbol for male, doesn't it?
It's like
I haven't looked at it in a while.
And then female with
like
a little
a combination.
Bit of like arrows. Yeah,
there's inspiration there from it. It kind of, that's what it reminds me of. I don't know if that's what it's supposed to be, but just trying to come up with a visual for the people who maybe haven't seen it, but just Google it.
Yeah, definitely recommend Googling it. But Prince, they were saying, even after his, death that, the further investigation that they found, and supposedly, I'm not sure if this is real or not. I would not be surprised, and I'm crossing fingers that it is true. But they were saying that, he had a vault that contained multiple unreleased albums, not songs, albums, and had over 50 fully produced music videos for those albums. So it just goes to show that this guy lived, breathed, and ate music, everything about him. Okay. And it would not be a surprise that, if later on down the road we're introduced to a new Prince album, and you're gonna probably have those that are gonna say, well, wait a minute, Prince is gone. How does this happen? Well, then that probably proves our theory right, that he had multiple
probably albums. Just waiting for hologram tech to get better.
Probably.
Could you imagine
they did that
tour?
They did that with Dio,
right?
And Tupac.
Oh, did they really?
They did that with Tupac.
Can you imagine just going to a show? Just going to a show, but B, going to
a show,
a Prince show with just hologram new music Prince.
Yeah.
It'll
happen one day. Mark my words, the technology will be there, and it will be feasible. I mean, it's kind of there now. If you go Google Ronnie James Dio hologram tour, is very bizarre because you've got the live members playing, and then there's this hologram of Dio walking around the stage and performing the songs. It's such a weird thing to see. Yeah, I can't even imagine going and seeing new, because at least the Dio stuff, it's not new. It's stuff that was, previously recorded and they had toured with it, but totally new prints with
Yeah.
like I don't know. That's just weird. That's
That'd
just
be cool.
weird.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. Yeah, to be honest, I wouldn't know how to react because it's like, your subconscious is saying that's not really him, but visually you're saying, okay, it's him.
For the super fan, that would sell immediately.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. But yeah, 50, Prince, he was only 57. So, but think about, his legacy. He started like I was mentioning, his first album was in 1978. So, again, one of those points of asking yourself, he was coming up on 40 years, 4 decades of music with, with multiple albums that were told to the public that could possibly be in a vault. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, another one that was, I feel like kind of, 57, still a little bit young, taken away. And again, I think he was, like the, and I'm probably gonna piss off some fans out there that aren't Tom Brady fans or whatnot, but he was like the Tom Brady of music. He just kept going and going and going, and it didn't seem like he was ever gonna stop.
I'll let you.
That is a bold statement.
That's a bold statement. I'm contemplating that. I'm like, do I want to even touch upon that? I'm just
not going there.
I'm letting it go.
It's an opinion.
It's an opinion. Yep. That's exactly what it is. But that's Prince. The second person I'm going to talk about, he's and I mentioned this a few times in previous episodes, and whatnot, especially with our gear talks and when we're talking about just how excuse me, growing up, playing as a musician, playing with you guys, playing with bands. But Terry Cath, he was 31 years old. He died in 1978 of an unfortunate gunshot wound. So the story behind this is, Terry Cath, he was, he had his stance with drugs and alcohol as well. But for this matter, in 1978, he was also a big fan of, guns. So, and unfortunately, one night when he was, hanging out with their technician, Don Johnson, was playing with his guns. Don Johnson was basically saying, hey, listen, I don't think that's really a good idea, because he was playing around with the chambers. And next thing you know, he showed Don, I guess the reports say she showed Don Johnson, hey, this is an empty clip. Look, everything seemed settled. And unfortunately, the last words were, coming from, Terry was, what do you think I'm going to do? Blow my brains out? And put the gun to his head and pulled the trigger and didn't realize that there was one already in the chamber. Ooh. And died instant impact.
That's being an irresponsible gun owner right there. 100%. I'm just going to say, any responsible gun owner would not point a gun at themselves or anybody else, even if they think that it's empty. That's just, that's unfortunate.
It's pretty unfortunate. And, it's he was only 8 days shy of his 32nd birthday. So, a little bit of Terry, he played bass. He actually started off on bass, and drums and banjo when he was younger. Played bass in a few bands before going to form Chicago with a bunch of his friends in the 60s. And then they released their first album, which is actually called Chicago Transit Authority in 1969. And then later on down the road, they took off the Transit Authority and just made it Chicago. But he was in Chicago from 1969 up to 1977. And it wasn't until 1978 when they released Hot Streets that was the first album without Terry. So again, a different type of dynamic when listening to that album. Excuse me. And Chicago is known for, Chicago 1, Chicago 2, Chicago 3, but Chicago Hot Streets, and I'm sure I might get some, flack for this. This is going off of a guesstimate, but I believe Hot Streets would be technically Chicago 9. I'm not sure. Maybe Chicago 10. It's one of them.
I'm not well versed in Chicago to comment whether that's true or not. I'm just gonna be like, yeah, okay, great. I think so.
It's one of them, and then eventually they went back to the Roman numerals of like Chicago 13, 14, 15, and moving on. But yeah, Terry Cath, it's really unfortunate. And also really stupid because Jimi Hendrix was asked one time, who's your influence on guitar, and he said Terry. So coming from a very big name like that, like Jimmy, and to say that Terry Cath was an influence on his playing, and then to do something stupid, again, it makes you wonder if it would change the whole dynamic of how Chicago would be. And also what was unique about Terry too is that the guy could sing. He's got like this deep bluesy voice that was just like, could probably make girls' panties wet and whatnot. I mean, who knows? Because it was just he's great. I mean,
another one. I'm just not going to touch that. It's fine. Let it fly.
That's just my opinion. But yeah, it's really unfortunate. He was only 31, guys. 31. So but hey, I guess stupidity can change life in a matter of things like that. So that's Terry. And my last one's going to be, and I'm probably going to mess this one up. And actually, this is kind of going back to our previous episode, which we talked about in our St. Patty's Day episode. But Dolores O'Riordan, or I think I'm actually,
it sounds right.
Yeah, I think it's O'Riordan.
Could be, yeah, O'Riordan. We'll probably mess it up, so I apologize, Cranberry fans. But she was 46. That one I was very, very shocked on. So she unfortunately passed away in January of 2018 of an accidental drowning in a bath following a sedation of alcohol intoxication and therapeutic medication. So basically, in a nutshell, accidentally got drunk and had a reaction to therapeutic medicine, in which she just was taking a bath and then fell asleep. And so but really unfortunate because in that time in London, she was in London in talks of creating a brand new Cranberry album, as well as her project called Dark, but it's actually D.A.R.K. But yeah, again, really unfortunate. Dolores was also one of those unique voices that you could pinpoint who the band was by just listening to her. Mm-hmm. She was infamous for always performing on stage barefoot. So that was kind of her little signature when she performed. But a little bit of history with her. So she joined the band back then, and I want to say it was probably around 1989, 1990, with some friends. And the band back then was called Cranberry Saw Us. And then the singer left, she joined in, and eventually they made a three-song EP and got high recognition, and eventually that led them to go ahead and getting signed, and they changed the name from Cranberry Sauce to just the Cranberries. So for those that are unfamiliar with the Cranberries, I'm sure that they had songs called Dreams and Linger that are obviously were very popular back in the early 90s, and especially off of their multi-platinum album. Everybody else is doing it, so why not? So why can't we? But yeah, also another one that was taken away from us. Also, young too. But it just goes to show you that, again, we're not even scratching the surface of the musicians out there that have been taken away from us. Regardless of their age, just their talent and their creativity has influenced us all, not only as listeners, and even if you're not a musician, at some point, even if you heard these names, I'm sure that there would be some sort of an impact that they've done, even to a listener versus from a musician standpoint. But yeah, that's just really, really unfortunate and whatnot. And we'll be circling back with more, because I'm sure our listeners are going to say, well, again, just like what Kayla said, why didn't you guys talk about this? And promise you, listeners, we promise you, we will circle back and we will talk about this.
So, question.
Yes.
To pose. After talking about all of these people, and I was thinking about this, is the passing of an artist, I mean, when that happens, in all of the different people we've talked about, their body of work all of a sudden tends to be on a pedestal or a platform or in the spotlight of sorts. Is that, I suppose I had the question and then I'm talking it through and now I'm like backpedaling a little bit, but do you think that it's more notable because for the artists that are still alive, we take it for granted? So like an Ozzy, right? Massive legacy. And but compare that to a Dimebag, which short-lived, because it was short-lived and it was so revolutionary in such a short amount of time. Is that, does the passing make them automatically higher or better than a current living artist because of just what they were able to accomplish in a short amount of time? Or is it just, we're just taking the artists that continue to live and provide new content for granted because we know, they're still pushing the envelope, so we don't really focus in on that. Does that make sense?
I think it depends on the artist partially. Yeah. Like, I know kind of on a similar line for me, for example, so, Cliff Burton aside, the members of Metallica are still alive. But kind of like Ozzy, they've got a huge catalog of music. They've got a huge history of their impact on the metal and the hard rock genre. But they're also getting up there in age. So while they haven't passed and they're still here, at the same time, there's also that like, well, how much longer are they going to be writing music or touring or those sorts of things? And, like the last time they came through this area, I didn't care how much it was going to cost me to go see them. I was going to go see them because I don't know how many more chances I'm going to get to go see them. So, yeah, I think it depends on the artist. I hate to say it, but I think like if it was a lesser known musician who hadn't really yet made a huge impact on the music world, that maybe it wouldn't be held as like in as high of regard. I don't like,
it's a hard question to pose.
Yeah.
It's more speculative. Yeah. There's no right answer, but I'm just, given the topic of where we are, curious to know you guys' thoughts on that particular stream of thought there.
So this is what I'm thinking, right? I'm thinking it's definitely, if we're kind of comparing this onto like a scale, I'm thinking that maybe we do take artists for granted a little more than those that have passed. And this is the reason why, is because when we think about, it's kind of like what Kayla said, we know that they're here. We're not thinking about them on a 24/7 scale. I mean, unless you're a hardcore, fan, but when you know that you get the news that someone's no longer here, it kind of makes you recalibrate and say, oh man, I really wish I should have gotten tickets back then.
Yeah.
And then it makes you think, oh, okay, maybe subconsciously you start going and you listening to another album again.
And you realize, this is really good. Why did I give this credence, this much credit earlier?
Exactly.
So, and I think that's kind of the full circle. There's no right answer. You're continually going around the chain until you're back at the start again with this type of question. But
so it's heavy. It's I think as society, and let's even talk about even now with because right now obviously we're still in the pandemic. But that, what if, again, let's knock on wood, that, Metallica, okay, if God forbid one of their members passed away, and one of us, or maybe a fan out there that has been listening to Metallica throughout their whole years, was really looking forward to go seeing them, maybe even bought tickets, okay, to the tour before it was canceled, and now all of a sudden, James Hetfield passed away. they're going to be in that state of mind where they're going to think, man, now I wish I did go see them a couple of years before buying these tickets. Or you're going to have those fans that are going to say, now I'm never going to be able to experience what a Metallica show is going to be with James Hetfield or something like that. You know, so you know what I mean? So it's one of those questions that it's definitely tough. It's definitely, you know, it tilts back and forth because, again, subconsciously we know that they're here. When we get news that they're no longer here, we think about what could have we done as a fan to be a little more closer with that type of artist. I don't know. That's a really good question, Ted. That's a really good question.
Yeah. I just figured it was a very a good discussion question, and you know, kind of ties in everything we've talked about, and you know, thinking of the picks that I made for today, and actually being able to see all of them in concert, and still having them. I don't know, seeing him in concert and then still appreciating the art, the art that they had created just as much, but slightly more, but possibly because they aren't here to make more of it. So I'm valuing what they've made a bit tighter than what I had before that, because there's, like you said, there's always new music, or they might release one more album and it's like, oh, I have room to like encompass one more album and learn more about them. But just a question.
And probably even
good question.
And actually probably even, and I was just talking about just one side of those that maybe haven't even seen them, but let's talk about those that you have seen and said, wow, they put on a really great show. I can't wait to see them again because you were so excited for them. And the next thing you know, no longer here. Plus, on top of seeing them and then hearing that, you know, they're reforming. So like, you know, in Allison Chains, that you yourself as a listener and a fan have high expectations. So it's like you're going into that concert or you're going into that new music saying this is either going to make it or break it as far as a fan. I know when Allison Chains came out with Black Gives Way to Blue, I was on that same line. Like, hey, this is either going to make it or break it. Either I'm going to like this album, move forward, or I'm just or any album before this, I'm just going to continuously listen to, because that's what I think of as far as Allison Chains.
Well, and that's, again, even without somebody passing away, like, I still regret the fact that I never got to see Metallica with Jason, because Rob is a great bass player, but to me, Jason felt like he was at times kind of like the energy of the band. If you've ever seen any videos of their live shows, I mean, the guy put in 110% every time he went out and played a show. And so again, he's not gone, but I have those thoughts of like, wow, you know, I've seen them play since, but like, man, I really wish I had had the opportunity to see them play with Jason. And I wasn't around during the Cliff era, so it's hard for me to be like, you know, I obviously I could say, yeah, I wish I had had the chance to see them with Cliff, because I've seen videos too, but I was there for the Jason era. I listened to a lot of the music during that time, but I never got to a show. So there's always that like, man, I wish. And I think it's the same way with, you know, when somebody passes away, like, wow, I really like Neil Peart. I can tell you right now, myself and other people that I've talked to are like, they came through on a tour a few years before he passed. I didn't go because of XYZ reason. I really wish I had, because now I can't see them ever again. There's not going to be another opportunity. So yeah, it's, I think it's one of those hindsight deals, you know, where it's like, now that opportunity is gone, it's a lot easier to sit there and go, well, I should have done that. But at the time, you kind of take advantage and take for granted the fact that you have those opportunities there, and that you just assume like, there'll be another chance, or there'll be more music to listen to. So yeah, I think that's a really great question. And, you know, it might be interesting to hear what some of our audience members' thoughts are on that particular question. Yeah. So I don't want to wrap the show yet because we haven't done our Song of the Week picks, but I'm just going to say, if you would like to share your thoughts on that particular question with us, you can email us at distortedopinions@gmail.com.
Distorted Opinion Show.
Who got it?
Yes.
This time change is really messing everyone up.
Tongue-tied.
Corrected. Caleb?
That's right. Mark your calendars, folks. Is today the 1st? Will this be dropping on the 1st? I don't know. I didn't even look at the date that the show was going to release.
It'll be basically
like
the
5th
3rd
or
of
something.
April, but
I think we get the exception
April
today
Fools.
because of the time change.
That's right. So yeah, distortedopinionshow@gmail.com. Send us an email, or you can leave us a voicemail at our Distorted Opinions anchor page at anchor.com/distortedopinions. And let us know what you think on that particular question. We'd love to hear what other people's thoughts are on that. But without closing the show, let's circle back around because we got to get to the song of the week here. Do you guys want me to go ahead and just do mine? And then, all right. So, quick reminder, we have a Spotify Song of the Week playlist. We put the link to that in the description of every show. We put all of our Song of the Week picks in their entirety on there. So if you hear something that you like and you want to hear the whole song, be sure to check that out. My pick, I'm going to stick with the theme of the show, and I'm going to go with Allison Chains' Nutshell off of 1994 Jar of Flies.
Good song and a good album.
It is, for sure. This song is one of my favorite Allison Chains songs, and I think it really sums up a lot of the issues that Lane was struggling with at that time. The loneliness, the despair, death. And, you know, there are people that kind of speculate that maybe it had a little bit to do with his feelings on invasion of privacy from the press and the recent fame that they had started to discover. But it's if you listen to the lyrics, you can really hear that there's a lot going on there. Lane's vocals are very beautiful, but at the same time very haunting in that song, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard it over the years, but it still gives me goosebumps when I hear it. It's just I don't know how to describe the feeling. If you haven't heard it, just go listen to it. But in more recent years, apparently Jerry has actually dedicated this song to Lane and their late bassist Mike Starr when they've played it live at shows. And he also apparently dedicated it to Vinnie Paul from Pantera when they performed at Hellfest Open Air Festival on June 24th, 2018, which was just 2 days after Vinnie's passing. Apparently, you know, Jerry and Vinnie were really good friends, and that was Jerry's way of paying tribute to Vinnie. But again, just a great song. I think probably one of Allison Chains' best songs. I mean, I have a lot of favorites from them, but this one for me is definitely top of my list as far as AIC songs. So Nutshell off of Jar of Flies, that's my pick of the week. Be sure to give it a listen. With that, I don't know which one of you, if that ties in well to one of you.
Well, it does, because my pick is a Pantera song. Because,
all right.
Dimebag and Vinnie, obviously, were both in this band, and my song of the week is coming off the 2000 album, Reinventing the Steel, which was the 9th and final studio album for Pantera. And the song of that album is my favorite Pantera song. If I had to boil it down and pick one, Revolution is my name, and this particular song, I mean, the great guitar solos, and it's got a great groove to it. And this song was actually nominated for a Grammy Award for Best Metal Performance in 2001. Unfortunately, it did lose to Deftones, but right?
Really?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's
This is like the Jethro Tull Metallica thing with the Grammys, like
Absolutely snubbed.
Deftones are a good rock band. I don't know if I categorize them in the same at the same level as Pantera.
No, but I mean
saying.
at the Grammy level, it's metal. It's
yeah.
it's one big umbrella.
That's kind of like, you know, do you add sugar or do you add sweet and low? It's the same product, but
Two very different things.
two different things.
Yeah.
So anyway, that song in particular is my favorite. It like I said, it just has great heavy guitar. The soloing and what the guitar is actually doing and the way it's played, absolutely fascinating to watch. We have a streamer on Twitch that plays a bunch of guitar on stream, and he does an excellent rendition. of that particular song. And so I got kind of get to relive and watch that in live, if you will, via that particular guitar player on occasion. But that song just, oof, so good. So that's my pick for this week. Matt, what you got?
All right. So again, sticking with what you guys mentioned and whatnot, I'm going to go with not Terry, unfortunately, and not Dolores. I'm going to go with Prince, specifically the song Bat Dance from the 1989 Batman motion picture. This song, I feel, doesn't really get enough credit that it deserves. If anyone knows about Prince and about Batman and what their connection is.
Did you just say Matman?
I said Batman. I could have said Matman. You know, a Prince and Matman.
Sorry, too easy.
But Prince and
Matman.
I'm drinking this coffee and swallowed the wrong way. No. But what Prince and Batman have in common is that Prince wrote all the music for the for the motion picture. And to this day, I can't really recall any other artist that has wrote all the music for another motion picture. I could be wrong. But what's pretty unique about this is that Prince had 2 singles off of this motion picture album. There was Party Time, and then there was Bat Dance. Bat Dance is very, very eclectic, very funky, very poppy, and very rock opera-ish. It's got classic elements of, the 1960 from the 1960 show Batman. So when you're listening to it, it's got kind of that classic quote, the Batman. But then around the 2-minute and 41 mark, he brings this grungy rock guitar solo into it, which brings it a whole brand new different flavor with a touch of, that 70s wah love. But more importantly, about, I want to say probably around 30-40 seconds later, it completely shifts. So it's going from this rock opera type of eclectic, funky song to Prince elements right around the 3-minute and 14 mark, shifting it completely different. And what's pretty unique is that, it starts adding in lyrics, and then later on down the road, it speeds up and ends with the song. But not only does the music video is also pretty unique because it features Prince and kind of almost like he's half of him is dressed like the Joker, and then half of him is just dressed up as regular Prince. I'm gonna call it the Two-Face phase, also another Batman character, but it's a funky song. I mean, I don't know any other song that can completely 180 in the middle of it and still sound and still be relatable to what,
the main theme is,
the main theme is.
Yeah.
So, so for Batman, it was perfect. And I mean, I definitely highly recommend checking it out. It's very unique, very awesome. If that's even correct grammar. But I think it's definitely one of those underrated songs that Prince doesn't really get enough credit for. I mean, again, Prince is known for his Kiss or his, Purple Rain. But, when you listen to Bat Dance, it's a whole nother genre. You can't even explain it. Just listen to it. And after you listen to it, you'll kind of get a sense of what I'm talking about. But that's going to be my song of the week is Prince, the Bat Dance from the 1989 motion picture Batman.
Awesome.
Nice.
All right. Well, I think this show might have run a little bit longer than we usually do, but there was a lot. Even narrowing it down to three artists apiece, there was a lot to unpack there. So
we have 9 artists that we talked about that are no longer here.
Right.
And again,
that's just a few.
That's just a few.
Yeah.
And they deserve the respect of more than an hour.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So, definitely expect that at some point we're gonna come back to this, and we're gonna talk about, you know, other artists that we didn't have time to talk about today. But you know, again, as we mentioned, if you have an idea for a show topic, or if you might want to be a guest on a future show, or if you have any thoughts on this particular topic, reach out to us. Send us an email, distortedopinionshow@gmail.com. Leave us a voicemail. That time I got it. See, the thing is, I didn't do it like in my order, so I've got like everything is memorized, and so when I do it out of order, it really screws up my mental notes. So, but you can also leave us a voicemail at our Anchor page at anchor.fm/distortedopinions. We've also got the links to all of our social media platforms over there, and a partial list of the places that the show is available in audio only format. If you don't see your favorite platform listed, just search for Distorted Opinions. If we are not on your favorite platform, let us know so we can get the show on there. And with that, we thank everybody for joining us this week to talk about this slightly depressing but important topic on how a lot of these people impacted the music world. And we will definitely be back next week with a new episode that'll maybe be a little bit more upbeat. Actually,
we know it's going to be more upbeat.
Well, yeah, I think next week is actually going to be our gear talk, but I'm not positive yet.
Gear talk.
Right. So, yeah, unless you guys have anything else that you want to add, I think that's it for this episode. So,
just want to say, and it's probably been a while went up, but you know, again, thank you to everyone that's subscribing to us. You know, thank you for all of our guests so far that are coming on the show. You know, again, 2021 has started off amazing. You know, we're getting actually close to doing 50 episodes, guys.
That's right. I know. We're almost at the 1 year.
Almost 1 year, and I'll tell you, you know, it just keeps getting better and better. You know, got a bunch of guests that are coming down the line, a bunch of surprises, and more importantly, again, it's all because of you guys and whatnot. You know, so thank you to everyone that's subscribing, or thank you for everyone that's listening to us. You know, we're having fun with it. Hope you guys are having fun, and just want to acknowledge that, you know, get ready, you know, because we still got a lot down the line. So again, just thank you for everyone that's listening to us, watching us, not in the shower, but watching us on the internet. But thank you.
Yes. All right. Thanks everybody. We'll see you next week with a whole new show.
Yeah.